Good afternoon. Today is September 6, 2012. My name is Nancy Nolan Jones, and I am here with Mr. Wallace D. Davis, who has graciously agreed to give an interview of his life story for the Social Justice Institute's Voicing in Action project. Thank you so much, Mr. Davis, for agreeing.
Well, thank you, Ms. Jones. It's exciting to be part of history.
All right. So, Mr. Davis, tell me your full name and birth date for the sake of the viewing audience.
My name is Wallace D. Davis. I was born November 3, 1929 in Youngstown, Ohio.
Youngstown. Tell me about your family and give me a little background about who you are.
Well, I'm the younger of two children. My mother and father resided in Youngstown. If you remember, the historian will note that the 1929 was part of the Great Depression. My father was an automobile mechanic, and he had to move out of town following his job. My mother was a maid in a hotel. She elected to stay in Youngstown and raise the children. So it was very hard for her, as most single parents, not single, but alone parents.
Mm-hmm. What was your sibling? A brother or a sister?
I have a sister 2 years older than I,
Mm-hmm.
a National Honor Society student at school. We're very proud of her.
I see. What was her name? Her name?
Thelma Louise Young, now Young.
Now Davis Young, right?
Correct.
I see. Well, can you tell me what was the Depression? You know, we hear a lot about that time, and I know it was difficult. Were you in elementary school, and how did it impact your family life, and what was life like for you? Did you feel it?
I remember vividly pulling a little red wagon to the warehouse where we received government food similar to relief. No, we called it relief, similar to welfare now. And we would go there, and my job was to pull the little red wagon when we got the government food.
So they would actually give you the food there?
That is correct.
I see. Was it enough?
Well, we survived.
Mm-hmm.
And
About how old were you then?
oh dear, now I have to figure out 6, 8, 10.
So did you go alone?
No. It was a family children experience. And we did that until probably 1941 or 2, when the World War II started, and things looked a lot better for us then. My mother got a job working at Ravenna Arsenal, and she had a regular paycheck, and we were able to eat a little better, and then we got up and running from there.
What was school like for you?
School was all right for us. We studied, and my sister won a spelling championship for the school, and I did mine, I think the following year. But she went on to be a National Honor Society student, and I just went on.
Was it an integrated school?
Oh yes. We were all there, and we were all broke. Now, I didn't say poor, because I think poor is a state of mind, but we were all relatively broke. And we all got along because we were all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have any trouble,
But
any
and
racial
your neighbors
trouble.
were of different nationalities?
Well, they were Caucasians, and we didn't have any problem with them at all.
That really sounds quite different from a southern story. So when you lived in the same community and went to school with the with diversity, as we call it now, then there were no instances that you can recall that. Okay, good.
No, not until we went into well, let me back up. The school system merged, and they would close one school and then we would go to another school, and we had a few brief moments of discomfort, but after we sort of set the rules, we got along with everybody.
And tell me, how did you set those rules?
Well, let the other people know that we were not going to tolerate any foolishness.
Did that start with your mother, or was it from student to student?
No, no, I'm speaking of our conduct in school.
Okay. That's interesting. So tell me about, what was Sunday like for you? Did your family go to church?
Sunday, oh yes, we went to church
Mm-hmm.
every Sunday. We dressed up in our best clothing, and we all went to church.
What faith are you?
Well, I left.
You ready?
Ready?
Okay, when you went to church, what church did you attend with your mother?
Well, we went to Third Baptist Church and Oak Hill Avenue AME Church. I would probably identify Oak Hill AME Church as my church, so that's where I think I went. Some parts of the family were in the Baptist church singing in the choir, but I remember going to the Oak Hill Avenue AME Church, and from there we started a Boy Scout troop under Mr. Graham Lynch, and it was Boy Scout Troop 3, and I have fond memories of going camping with Mr. Lynch and the boys in our group.
So, what kinds of activities were you involved in school?
As we question.
In school, what kinds of activities were you involved in?
Well, when I got up into high school, I was what was called a manager, and that was someone taking care of the equipment. My job was to make sure that all the equipment was in top shape, ready for the games, and I had a medicine kit. Now, we didn't call ourselves water boys, but we had 2 or 3 of us who would carry the first aid kit out on the field if someone got hurt.
This was football they were.
This was in the football.
I see.
And then I was in charge of the field house, South High School field house on Market Street in Youngstown. And it was very interesting. The teachers and the coaches would say, "Okay, Davis, take over." And that was funny to me because there wasn't anybody there but me. But I was in charge of an empty field house.
You were. So did you like your teachers?
Oh yes, certainly.
They
Everything went very well. I was also in the choir in the South High School a cappella choir.
were you? What about social activities outside of school? Were you?
I was very poor at social activities. My job was to go to school and study and spend time working. I worked at the field house, and while everybody else was learning to dance, I was working at the field house. So even till today, I cannot do any dancing.
You're not the dancer, huh?
No, and I don't want to dance around that answer.
Tell me, so now we're finishing high school, we're moving along with your life, and so what came next? I mean, did you have any plans after high school?
Well, I joined the Navy, and I don't remember what time frame. Shortly after I got out of high school, I joined the Navy and spent time there. And that's a long time. We're going back many, many years.
Many years. The Navy. So you joined the Navy after the war.
Yes, 1948 is when I joined the Navy. And I served 1 year, 1 month, and 27 days, but who's counting?
Oh my goodness, that was enough for you, huh? So what did you do when you came out? Did you have some plans?
I worked various jobs. I got married, and sort of blanked out at the time.
Did you? What was your first job?
I worked several jobs. I worked construction, carrying those cement bags for a contractor. I worked at a garage, driving a little tow truck, going out and picking up cars and bringing them into the garage for repair.
Did you?
I also worked in a factory, commercial shearing and stamping on Logan Avenue in Youngstown, Ohio. Why am I remembering all of these incidents?
Yeah, it's good. It's good to remember and look back on your life, isn't it?
Incidentally, I was drafted. I went into the Navy and came out of the Navy, and then I was drafted, and I was all ready to go back to serve in the Army, and somebody pulled my coat and said, well, wait, you've already served your time, so you don't have to go back. So I was just very, very close to serving 2 terms.
So that meant that you didn't object. You were dutiful to your country.
Well, I'm not going to claim so much patriotism, but it's just the thing to do.
Right, right. So we have you out of school now, and you worked in several different places, and life is going along good, and
Well, I mentioned I got married and had 2 children. We had 2 girls, Debbie and Teresa, my hearts.
your hearts. So you had fun with those girls.
Say again?
You had fun with your girls.
Well, yes, it was quite an experience being a young father.
It was. Well, what would they say now? How would they remember that? What do you think they would say? That you did a good job, I bet.
Well, when you interview them, we'll let them speak.
Okay. Well, that's good. I think sharing that they were the joy of your life, we can fill in the blanks. So, Mr. Davis, when did you decide to go into the career that you're in now?
Well, Mr. Cummings was my uncle. He had married my auntie, and he had no children, so I was to serve as his heir. And after he coaxed me and guided me, then I accepted the urging and set about a course of learning the route to a funeral service. So were it not for Mr. Cummings, we wouldn't be here this afternoon.
Isn't that something? So, did you do it it was something obviously that had not really crossed your mind, but was it something you looked forward to doing?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Cummings had an old Ford, and when he came to visit us, oh, we thought he was just the cat's meow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I eagerly embraced his urging to go to school and go to embalming school and become an undertaker.
Well, in that time period, that was about what year?
I don't remember.
You were maybe 20?
Oh, no, no, no. Well, all through school, it was on our mind. And then after I got out of the Navy, I think then I went to work for a while, and went through Youngstown College to get enough credits to go into embalming school. And embalming school was 1 full year. Then we take state board examinations, and I came to work for Mr. Cummings, Uncle Paul.
I was going to ask you, did you call him Mr. Cummings or he was Uncle Paul?
I call him the boss.
Okay. All right. So he was a good teacher for you?
Oh yes, he is excellent.
Did they have a lot of competition? Did they have a lot of funeral homes in your town at that?
Well, I didn't do any work in Youngstown. I came to Cleveland, where Mr. Cummings had established Cummings Funeral Home on Cedar Avenue.
About Cedar and what?
7204 Cedar Avenue.
I see.
I graduated from Cincinnati College of Embalming, came to Cleveland that Friday night, and started to work Saturday morning on my first funeral, and I've been going at it ever since. We became Cummings and Davis Funeral Home after several years of my working with Mr. Cummings.
Wow, that was exciting. So, were your children born at that point?
Oh yes, yes, but they were not coming to Cleveland with me.
So you came kind of and paved the way. Where did you live when you moved to Cleveland?
At the funeral home.
Did you?
I had one room over the funeral home.
And did you just charge into the position and with a lot of enthusiasm and get involved in the community? I mean, or was it just kind of a slow
Well, I was
growth process?
I was on the staff, and it was not until I came to East Cleveland that I got more visible.
I see. When did you come to East Cleveland?
I came in 1972.
So is that when they moved the funeral home, you decided to move here?
Well, we now can move into a social phenomenon called white flight. And as all these white funeral homes moved out of the neighborhood, then other funeral homes became available. We were fortunate enough to get one here, where we are now.
Mm. But tell me, what was the decision to come here versus staying on 75th?
Well, we felt that our clientele deserved a more commodious facility, and we were able to acquire this property. There were maybe 6 or 8 along Euclid Avenue. It was called Funeral Home Row.
Really?
And they were side by side, many of them up and down, where we are now and across the street. But we bargained for this one because this gentleman's clientele all moved out. They moved out of the neighborhood, and I mentioned the white flight.
Mm-hmm.
So it was their idea to follow their clientele. So they moved up on Mayfield Road mainly, where they operate now.
So the other funeral homes, the other 6 or 7 that were here on Euclid, they were white establishments?
That is correct.
And you were the only black one for?
I think we were second. Someone was prior to our coming.
Okay. So, did you have to do a lot of advertising to let people know where you were?
Oh, yes. We had a tough time there for a minute until we could inform our clientele that we have moved and we're now on the main street in town, Euclid Avenue, and come on out. We had an open house. People came in to see what was available, and they responded positively. They were glad that we had a better facility now with more space to accommodate the families.
So, when you moved to East Cleveland, your earliest memories of it, what was it like at that time?
Well, it was quite exciting for us. We were able to serve our families with greater flexibility, more space, and more capability than what we had on Cedar Avenue. And if you can imagine acquiring a facility that was so much better than what we had left. Mr. Cummings had died prior to our coming out here, and it was quite an experience.
So, as a whole, when you moved into this facility, were your neighbors cordial? Were they very friendly or not so friendly?
I did not perceive any animosity. I think the Caucasians who were still here were busy serving the remaining families, and then I guess when they felt they couldn't.
Okay, so Mr. Davis, how was the interaction with your neighbors when you moved to East Cleveland? We just kind of like to hear what your views of the city, what were your first impressions of the city? And what are your fondest memories of the city?
Well, those are good questions to consider. We were excited, and I think the word excitement permeates our existence. We were glad to have a facility that we could offer our clientele, and we had no difficulty at all from any opposition. My neighbors were interested in getting out of the neighborhood because they wanted to follow their market, follow their clientele up Mayfield Road. And the city was fine with us. We didn't have any difficulty by way of resentment, overt resentment. Nothing comes to my mind that would
Was
speak.
it a pretty city?
Oh yes, very nice, and the reputation of strict law enforcement and code enforcement preceded our coming. It appeared that the police department was on the job, and the housing inspectors were right there, and the persons who lived here were homeowners, not renters. So they were scuffling to maintain and live up to the expectation of the city.
Mm. Did you start getting involved in civic activities at that time?
In November of 1975, Mrs. May Stewart, one of the leaders, the East Cleveland leaders, invited me and encouraged me to enter public service. I ran for commissioner. The city had a city manager form of government, and there were 5 commissioners and 1 city manager. So I ran for the position. I won, and that began my career, if you will, as being a public servant. I never called myself a politician because I was committed to serving the public. Therefore, I was a public servant. I had, I believe, 12 years on the legislative body, on the commission, and on the city council prior to my running for mayor, when the city changed the form of government from city manager form to a strong mayor council form.
What do you think prompted that decision to change forms of government?
There was an active cadre of persons who felt that a mayor was closer to the people than a city manager would be. So they went through the steps that I don't remember to change from a city manager form of government to a strong mayor form of government. I was asked to be a mayor, but I did not feel that I had the capability at the time. So later on, after I saw what was up, then I ran for mayor, and I was elected, and I served 3 terms as mayor.
Did you? The terms were how long?
There were 2-year terms, and then we changed the government to a 4-year term. So I had 2 2s and a 4.
So you were in office quite a long time.
Totaling 20 years, I believe that I was privileged to serve the city.
What would have been the most dominant issues that you would have had to deal with at that time?
Well, probably allaying the apprehensions of the certain residents that we were not a threat. We, the people, were not a threat to them. And I think we were successful.
You were successful. What did city council and the mayor, was there was a cohesive relationship at that time?
We had periods of differences of opinion. It was, I think, difficult for some of our residents to embrace the concept of a mayor versus a city manager. We were able to, I was anyway, able to communicate with my people. And I like to say my people because I love public service, and being elected mayor enabled me to do things for people that I could not do as a city manager.
Did you serve as city manager?
No.
No, okay. But after, who was the first mayor then?
Attorney Darrell Pittman
Okay.
was the first mayor.
And who was the city manager before that?
We had a series of three, I believe. Eddie Robinson was probably the most recent one, and Curtis Hall was a city manager.
Were they African Americans or Caucasian?
They were not Caucasians.
Okay. So the demographics are changing. The city is still running smoothly?
Well, at that time, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we went through this white flight business.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say the city was running smoothly, as far as the government was concerned, yes, we had a smooth transition. I would believe.
And so you said the biggest challenge at that time, maybe challenge wasn't your word, but the biggest responsibility was to just make everybody feel comfortable with the changes.
That was high on my list.
Okay.
And those of us in city government at the time were not these and those representatives of our people. So I think that went a long way toward letting the residents sleep at night.
So how did the other community services respond to the change of command? The fire and the police department, was it difficult for them, or?
Well, we maintained services, I think, very well at the time. The population had a decline from 39,000, little by little by little. There was a change in the census.
What, looking back, this is one of the questions that they did want us to ask. Has racism impacted you personally, or how has it impacted the city of East Cleveland?
Well, along with that white flight, there became the proliferation of a different type of person. The people who lived here before were owners. Then when the white flight owners abandoned their homes, then renters began coming in along with some of us owners. And
So, I think where we were kind of discussing, have you experienced racism when you moved into the city?
No. It has not affected us overtly.
As not as a businessman, but as a servant of the people, as mayor, do you think racism has impacted the city?
No, I don't think so. I'm not aware of any incident where we have, well, we became the majority. We the people became the majority. We are the most densely populated municipality in the country, behind one other small city. And thanks to Congressman Lewis Stokes, we were able to get a different rating from the government, and we got money that we could use to kill that.
Okay, so you're saying that we were a densely populated city, second to, who was number one?
East St. Louis
Uh-huh.
was more densely populated, but we were second, and due to the excellent representation of Congressman Lewis Stokes, we were able to get a different rating, which enabled us to have more money through Community Development Department, and we use that money for paving, resurfacing streets, working on low and moderate income housing, curing slum and blight conditions, and a litany of programs that we were able to take care of.
When you moved into the city, I'm sorry, not moved into the city, but when you moved into your service as mayor of the city, what prompted you to make that decision to run for mayor?
As I saw what my predecessor was doing, I figured I could do that also, and probably, well, at the time, I enjoyed a nice reputation. Kill that.
So, I know that you have a lot of experience in this city, Mr. Davis. I know you have experience as a public servant and experience again as a public servant as a business owner. So, I want to know, have you felt any inequality as a black business in this city?
No, I haven't experienced anything. I have not perceived any inequality. We have served our people professionally, and I have served as a mayor and a council person and a commissioner. And I've tried my best to take care of everybody in every capacity.
In any of those roles, have you experienced any inequality? Have you felt, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a race thing. It could be just from your peers in the community. And if you haven't, that's a good thing. I'm not trying to say you have to have felt that, but have you felt maybe where people didn't value what you were trying to give?
No, I wouldn't say that. Having spent so many years in public service prior to my becoming mayor, my clientele and my voters know that I was going to do the right thing when I attained these positions of responsibility.
Mm-hmm. So when you ran for office, then a good turnout. People came out for you, right?
They did.
How many terms again did you serve?
I served 3 terms as mayor.
And those were 2-year terms?
There were 2 2-year terms and 1 4-year term.
So you served a long time. People really got to know you, and you got to know them.
And having been a resident and a business owner and a provider of public service, they knew me in many roles.
You wore a lot of hats.
I wore a lot of hats. And I lived here at the funeral home. I got my hair cut up the street with Mr. Crawford's barber shop. I went, pumped my own gasoline, drove my own car, so I was not a drone on the city.
Well, how do you think the city compares now to then?
Well, really no, I don't know how I can measure it. We've had a series of mayors since I left, and there have been many, many conditions that existed since I left. We've had a lot of people left the city, and we have vacant houses torn down, and so many houses or buildings have been boarded up. And that looks bad in any municipality. And it isn't anything that we can claim as our own, but the conditions that precipitated these results make us look bad. And then there is the perception that East Cleveland is at the bottom of the list on any. My stuttering, I think, would show that it's hard to describe. I've been here many, many years, and we had such social conditions existent here in East Cleveland.
One of the things that I believe, and this is just my opinion, but economics, it all boils down to economics. And if people don't have jobs, would you say that has a great impact?
Well, unemployment is not anything that we can claim individually as only an East Cleveland condition. But we have a problem that that would make people, well, I don't know how to say that either. If everybody thinks that East Cleveland is the bottom of the pit, and I always took offense at that. The things that trouble East Cleveland could trouble any municipality. And we have to, not just in East Cleveland, but throughout our area, we have to help people live better. We have to make our city more attractive than it is. We have to, I think, well, I can't second guess the present mayor, because he is a busy little guy, and he's getting things done. And I can't say that he's doing things that other mayors would not do, but he's getting things done, and we're going to be a lot better, I think, because of his tendency in City Hall. And again, I have to be careful that I don't say that's an endorsement, because it's not my place at this juncture to endorse or condemn the persons in elected offices.
Right. I definitely understand that. Can you remember instances when the community fought for something?
Identified, yes. In general, well, we fought unemployment and vacant, vandalized houses and things like that. But there was one issue that troubled us, and I can share it now. Residency requirement. There was a group of citizens who felt that we should make everybody move into East Cleveland if you're going to work here. And I thought that was reprehensible. I didn't see any connection between a person's residence and his commitment to do his job or her job professionally. And we had, and it went on the ballot. And in the nuts and bolts of the election, the nuts worked harder than the bolts. And they did pass that residency requirement. But we did not enforce it because I believe at a higher court, there were court cases to be ruled. And prior to adjudication, we didn't want to cause our people the strain of uprooting their homes, taking kids out of school, having the wives reassign their priorities, just so you could live, just so you could work here in East Cleveland. It didn't make sense to me then, nor does it make sense to me now. And at the time, we had two classes of housing. We had the people up on the hill near Cleveland Heights, and then we had people down here where I live. So you had a choice of two, but it just didn't make sense. And as it happened, I think the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional or something like that. But we were able to keep our people working and not cause them that grievous discomfort.
Mm-hmm. How would you say the surrounding institutions have impacted the city?
Well,
or have they?
Our biggest employer, I believe at the time, was General Electric. And Huron Hospital. And I don't know, well, those two for sure. And their presence and tax payments enabled us to provide a degree of service that would have been impossible without their presence. We were landlocked, as you know, Cleveland Heights and Cleveland, so we couldn't expand anywhere. So we got along very, very nicely. We had a mutual aid agreement with the Cleveland Heights and with Cleveland. Mutual aid being any type of conflagration, we could call upon their fire departments to come down and help us. We had a relationship with Cleveland Heights at one time where we would man the police department with a person from Cleveland Heights and a person from East Cleveland patrolling a mutually uncomfortable area of the city. I had good relations with Huron Hospital prior to Cleveland Clinic presence. And we were able to get a few things done because of the relationship that I had with the hospital president. It saved the city a lot of money.
Did it?
A lot of money.
Can you disclose?
Well, again, remembering that it's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But the city would benefit from the Huron Hospital's presence because they were, anybody who needed attention, medical attention, would be taken to Huron Hospital. It was Huron Road at the time, but now it's Huron, it was Huron. And the city would not have to, should have paid for their care, but eventually we worked it out where we didn't have to pay. And the city, the hospital had a lot of free services rendered to us. And
very benevolent hospital at that point.
At that time, and the way I worked it out with the hospital, we were able to get the care free, and I was very proud of that. I didn't blow my whistle about it, but it just got done. Mm-hmm. One of the criticisms of my administration was that we did not blow our horn. We did good work because it was the thing to do. And maybe one reason I didn't have 4 terms, people didn't know how much good we had done and were doing.
There was a decline in the population's behavior that had to call in the, I guess the sheriff department at one time shared the responsibility. Was that when you were in office or after? Okay.
No. We did not have any assistance from the sheriff's department during my administration.
Did you have a lot of problems with truancy? And were you able to work with the school district?
I don't remember all the relations that we had with the school system, but we were very proud of what our school personnel were doing with the conditions that they had to work with.
So tell me, what's your favorite, maybe, I want to say spot, but what is your favorite landmark in East Cleveland? What would be your favorite landmark?
Other than Cummings and Davis Funeral Home?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's first. What's the second
That's
one?
first. What's the second? That's kind of hard. That's a hard one. I don't think I've ever categorized the
Some people like the park,
spots.
Forest Hills Park, and
in Forest Hill Park, there's a pond, and there were, I think, those Canadian geese that had taken up residence in our pond area, and families could go there and commune with nature, but they had to watch their step because the geese were not too
they didn't get to the outhouse.
too particular. But the pond area was nice. The parks certainly are nice. that I could name several favorite spots. General Electric complex
Mm-hmm.
and Huron Hospital. These are viable entities that were producing for the city. And so any mayor or any administrator would be happy to name them as welcome and try to cultivate a warm, fuzzy atmosphere so they would stay here paying taxes that we could use to provide services for our folks.
Right. Now I understand that it seems that I've heard that you were a mayor that was out and about with the people. Someone told me that you had business cards, and when you were out, you would hand them the card, and on one side it would say Cummings and Davis, and on the flip side it would say Mayor. Is that true?
Yes, yes, yes. And again, to let my people know that I am available. I'm part of the community. But it's also worth noting that the city bore no expense. I also had printed on there, not printed at city expense, taxpayers' expense,
Okay.
so that the people didn't think that I was trying to promote my own personal business
Sure.
at city expense.
Sure, no. And I didn't take it that way. But what I did, the way I took it was the fact that you were a person who cared so much about your constituents that you were always out there with them, seeing what could be done. Would you say that?
Oh, yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, by listening to the people and finding out what's on their minds, and then we know to direct our energy to solve that particular condition.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've always been a worker, and I had no problem with going out to be with my people
Mm-hmm.
and let them know that I have been there and I have done that. I've helped, well, I don't want to blow my horn, but I've been part of the city. And there are other persons in the greater Cleveland area who were so happy that I was elected mayor because I knew how to communicate with other municipalities. I knew how to get things done.
Would you say that's important to communicate with the
Oh,
other?
yes. Oh, absolutely. When I was first elected, one official in the greater Cleveland area, whom I will not identify, said, well, he was so glad that I was elected. East Cleveland finally did something right, were his words,
Mm-hmm.
because I knew how to respect everybody's position as related to other municipalities, other governmental entities.
Mm-hmm.
I was involved with the County Planning Commission and the Ohio Municipal League. I was with RETA and the Regional Income Tax Agency, that is, and Issue 2 Committee for general repairs throughout the community, throughout the county. I have a litany of associations that I experienced, bringing East Cleveland more than a modicum of respectability and recognition, because I wanted them to know that we're back and we know how to get along with everybody else. At the time of my leaving office, I was president-elect of the Ohio Municipal League. I was at the time on a policy committee of the National League of Cities, a policy committee of the U.S. government, United States, what are they? Oh, gee, I hope, I can't think of it. Anyway.
What was your relationship? Was it under your tenure that, or it probably was before your tenure, that Congressman Stokes was able to get a special classification, I guess you would call it?
Good word. I don't remember what time of my tenure that was, because he did so much and we owe him so much, because he really took care of us, and he'd be my friend for life.
It's good. When you say really took, the classification was one thing, but would there be, say, earmarked dollars that he could send this way to help with the,
well, I'm sure,
operations?
I'm sure during his appropriation activity, he embraced the problems of East Cleveland.
What do you think? There was such drastic changes. There were businesses all up and down Euclid, I understand. There were businesses all up and down Hayden. That had to have been very, very difficult for the city to see that dissipate.
Yes. No city likes to see a business close, and we were no different. But for whatever individual reason, the merchants decided to cease operations. It may have been in part because of the departure of the clientele, of the customers, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't have enough business, of course they have to close.
And it boils down to economics, huh?
And that's true. I stress, it isn't an individual, unique problem. It happens all over. When your customers leave you.
Well, when I'm a visitor to the city, I don't live here. One of the things that we hear a lot about from a historical perspective is when Rockefeller was here. But it seems to me that there's been a lot of life in this city after Rockefeller, and what would you say to that? What would you have people to know?
Well, he left before I got here. But having been a resident of East Cleveland, he made his mark, certainly, as we all would like to leave a nice impression. But his neighborhood houses up there on the hill, which I understand he had built for his management personnel, and he had his own residence up there on the hill. But for
and we were talking about Rockefeller and life after Rockefeller in East Cleveland.
Well, he certainly had made his mark by building the houses for his management team, and then having a residence in the park. And by the way, he donated the park, a portion, to the city of Cleveland Heights, and a portion to the city of East Cleveland. And I think there was some caveat that it had to remain that way. I don't think we were able to make it commercial. There were certain rules in place that we had to follow. But there was life after Rockefeller.
Indeed. And you contributed to that life.
Well,
A lot of good people still here.
oh, sure. Sure. And the area up on the hill is probably the most desirable area in which to live.
You know, I've had the privilege of serving on committees, and I hear a lot of talk these days about University Circle moving this way. And there's some new townhouses down the street. How do you perceive that? As a good thing or
Oh yes.
timely? It's a timely thing?
I would think it is a good thing, as they being friendly encroach in our city. Coming up Euclid Avenue, they almost have to come into East Cleveland, and the work of UCI will probably facilitate that encroachment. And when I say encroachment, it's not in a negative connotation.
Do you think that there would be a lot of responsibility on the sitting administration to make sure that the growth and development is guided with the best interests of all concerned?
I do not know anything ulterior about their coming east up Euclid Avenue. And I believe the new housing units being prepared in that area would inure to the benefit of the persons who would be working in the University Circle area. And then certainly it would help the city, because if there's a taxation issue, the new people coming into the townhouses would be workers. What I have always said is producers. East Cleveland had a proliferation of non-producers, persons who needed city services but were not putting anything into the pot. And you certainly could not discriminate against them for whatever reason they were non-producers, be they welfare type persons, senior citizens, or just people who are temporarily non-producers. But with the development of this University Circle area, I would suspect that they would be producers, and the money generated through taxation would enable us to do more for the non-producers. That had been a challenge even prior to my being mayor.
So,
And again, I have to be careful that I make sure there was no discrimination against the non-producers, because we had, I believe, a 70% ratio of persons on fixed income, and they were not taxed, but we still provided services for them.
that's a positive thing. What would you say your vision for the future of East Cleveland would be? Is there any specific area that needs addressing more than the other, and then the overall vision?
we can't go anywhere but up. And with the development up along this part of Euclid Avenue, that's a big help. As we work on the perception that many people have of East Cleveland, unfortunately, the media thrive on negativism, and that isn't an East Cleveland phenomenon.
Right.
So we have to work on image enhancement. And as we find out, there are positives throughout the city, we have to let people know that East Cleveland is not the pits. We have negative conditions, yes. We have positive potential, absolutely. And as we speak, things are happening and will continue to happen. It is important that the responsible positions be filled by positive people who have the improvement, have the good of the city at heart. And if the elected officials and appointed officials can remember, take care of the city first, not look out for what's in it for me, but what you can do for the people whom we are elected and appointed to serve. I'm not running for any office.
You're not going for another term?
No, I'm finished.
You're finished.
But
Are you? This is another part of the question. What are you prepared to do to help that process? So, not in a leadership seat necessarily, but as a supportive citizen.
Well, do my part as an entity within the city. We're providing goods and services and employment to people and paying our taxes, doing our share down here. We're letting the little lights shine. I don't remember how that song goes, but I don't want to get religious on you. But by doing our part, paying our taxes and keeping our property up, so that as people drive by, they know that we are here, we've been here, and we expect to stay. Again, providing services and doing our part.
I think that's a perfect place to stop.
Well,
is there something else that you can?
Yes, I wanted to. My wife has been putting up with me for, as we speak, I think about 45 years. And it's hard for her to have a husband like me who is committed to the public. We live right here at the funeral home, and she has to take a back seat many times when I had a meeting or I had been called out to address someone's concern. So it shattered the home atmosphere that other married persons enjoy. But we've been here since 1972, and it's been quite a ride.
Well, it seems to me that she's been a wonderful partner to permit you to do the things that you have been able to accomplish, so I would say that you've done them together.
Well, I'm grateful that I met her. May we go and continue?
Well, I think we could wrap it up here.
All right. Well, I salute her for her allegiance to me and my people.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and views on your life story.
Well, as I mentioned, I'm honored that you thought I had something to say. I'm sure as we go over this, we'll say, well, we should have said something about that.
Yeah, that's how it always goes. But
You know, but
come
I
back
think
for part 2.
all right.
Okay.
But I look forward to continued relations with University Circle.
Thank you.